Hey, what's going on? This is Jared coming at you. Today we're going to be talking about how to learn a new song. That can seem, I don't know, difficult for beginner musicians. But I'm here to tell you it doesn't have to be that difficult. So let's dive into it. All right, this one's a winner. We're geared up, ready to go. The first thing you're going to do is prepare yourself to do the activity. So if you're a singer, you're going to want to prepare your voice for singing. If you're an instrumentalist, you're going to want to prepare yourself to play. And so this could be as simple as doing some vocalises for somebody who's singing. Maybe that means stretching a little bit, getting your body engaged, but also your mind, getting the mindset to perform this activity, which we call music making, and specifically reading something for the first time. It takes a lot of mind work, and so you really want to be as prepared as possible up here and throughout the entirety of your body. So if you're in a group setting, sometimes your leader will help you to warm up. They'll go through some activities that will allow you to develop your own sense of ability, and I'll say that a different way. They'll walk you through some steps to get your body and mind right by first going through some simple scales, maybe 5-note scales. If you're an instrumentalist, that'll be probably octave or 2-octave scales. And then they're going to want to do some group activity, trying to pull us in as a unit. So first what they're going to do is they're going to try and get you to warm up as an individual. And second, they're going to want you to warm up as a group. So they're going to do things like maybe a warm-up song that you're used to doing. And that will allow for everyone to be on the same page to come together as a musical group. For me personally, I carry a lot of tension in my shoulders, and so I really try and work my shoulders out before I prepare to sing or to mostly just to sing. And so I stretch a little first. I stretch before anything else. That gets my body partially ready so that I don't carry that tension into my voice when I'm trying to sing. And then after that, I go through some simple vocal warm-ups to prepare the rest of the way. The second thing you're going to want to do is when you get your piece of music, you've actually got it in your hands now, you're going to want to go from big ideas to small ideas. What I mean by that is you want to be able to know in general what the piece is going to sound like. You're going to look for things like form. You're looking for repeat bars, maybe solid bar lines of any kind. Stylistic markings like the word marcato or staccato, things that might tell you what the piece is supposed to sound like in general. Stylistic markings are very important. There will also sometimes be, in English, some text that's descriptive. So things like with energy or smooth and connected. Things like that will inform you what it's supposed to sound like in general. Later in the piece, the style might change, so be ready for that. Go ahead and flip through and look for changes in the style as well. Maybe one section is going to be more broad and loud and big, but then later on in the piece, they back off. They want to be more delicate, simple, maybe more gentle. The composer has already done the work for you in the English text, descriptive English text above the line. So look for that. The other thing you're going to want to look for is the roadmap. Is there a dies al fine? Is there a going back to the sign del segno? Is there a DC, da capo, from the head? Is there a repeat bar, kind of like what we talked about earlier? Is there something else that's going to inform you about how the piece is supposed to be performed as far as the roadmap is concerned? And go ahead and work through the roadmap up front. That's what you want to do. And that will give you a better idea of how it's supposed to sound and where you're supposed to go when you're actually ready to start perform. After you get done with the larger sections, you're going to want to look for the smaller things. Before we were looking for major big things. So going from big to small, you were looking for sections, you were looking for style. The next thing you're going to want to look for, the smaller things, is like phrasing markings. Phrase markings. Is that right? I don't know. Maybe phrases in general. Are the phrases regular? Are they 2-bar phrases? Are they 4-bar phrases? How long are they? What does the contour of the melody line look like? Is it super jumpy? Does it have a ton of leaps? Or is it very what we call conjunct, where it's all stepwise motion and real smooth? So things like that. Those are smaller ideas that you want to look for. From there, start looking at individual notes. You're looking for a note you're starting on, any entrances that you have. Where is that starting pitch? For singers, solfege is super important here. You can go ahead and mark in maybe hard solfege syllables that will help you jog your memory later on. And that is going to put you way ahead of the game when you actually are ready to do the performing. Start thinking through those individual pitches, but also rhythms, maybe hard rhythms, and go ahead and look through the entire piece this way. The third thing, look for patterns. While you're looking at the piece for the first time and preparing to read it through for the first time, maybe there's a phrase that keeps coming back. There's something that recurs over and over again. If you can learn it right the first time, then that's all. You just have to recognize that the pattern is there and then remember the work that you already did. If you don't know that there's a pattern, it's going to be that much harder to go and learn it as individual notes and sections. But if you know that there's a pattern, it's going to be so much easier. Take note of any patterns, including intervals, rhythmic ideas. Maybe there's a text that keeps recurring, like a tagline. Any of those things are going to put you ahead and get you ready to sing it through or play it through for the first time. Learning the pattern and when it's used will make the learning easier. I guarantee it. The next thing you're going to want to do, number 4, look for trouble spots. Now you know how you operate. You know your strengths and weaknesses already. You know what's going to be hard. So when you look at a piece of music for the first time, you're going to go ahead and want to anticipate things that are going to trip you up. If there's a certain line that you know is going to be hard, or an interval that you think is going to be rather difficult, or maybe there's a note that's outside of your normal range, go ahead and take note of those things, circle them on the page, and then when you get to them, you'll know that that was going to be a hard thing. If you're ready for it, it might seem less difficult. Just being prepared is going to make it that much easier to get through those difficult spots. But if you don't know where they are, then it's going to be that much harder and you're not going to be as successful. Look for trouble spots ahead of time. The next thing you want to do, number 5, is get to the end. Make sure you do all of these things all the way through the piece, from start to finish. Some people just like to start. They like to look at the beginning. And they think they know how it's going to go in the end, and they totally neglect it. And then they go ahead and try it, and they forgot that the end was different. They didn't realize that it was going to be different in some way. Usually at the end of the piece, the rhythms that exist earlier, maybe there's a pattern that we already saw, but the pattern has changed slightly. The notes are longer. Maybe there's a chord in there that's changed, just so that it can get to a final sounding cadence of some kind. So melodically, it looks a little different. Harmonically, it sounds a little different. But it's only because it's time to end. But if you didn't get to the end, you wouldn't have noticed those things. Your first run through is not going to be 100% successful if you didn't look at the end. So go ahead and do that up front. Okay, now it's time to actually do the thing. Time to sing or play the piece through. Yes! We're finally there. Okay, it's time to run it. The first thing you want to do is focus on getting the notes and rhythms correct. If you practice it wrong, you are actively learning it wrong. That's what I want to get across here is if you can replace your concept of what practice is and replace that word, practice, with the words permanent learned behavior, You are actively learning new behavior when you practice. And if you practice something wrong, it's going to be that much harder to break those habits, those permanently learned habits that you're creating now. So try as best you can to do the basics. Take away style if you feel like it. If you really are feeling stressed about getting it right, start with notes and rhythms. Go for the basics. Circle any spots that you miss, especially if you didn't notice them the first time. When you were going through and circling trouble spots, if something comes up that you didn't circle, that's going to be a huge thing that you want to take note of. And don't move on until you note that you might have missed this note or missed this rhythm. That way you know that it's a trouble spot for you, especially because you didn't catch it the first time. Woo. A common mistake that some musicians make is that they do things half-heartedly. They don't do things the whole way. For singers, this means sometimes they don't sing out when they go through a piece of music the first time. And remember what we said about practice. It's permanently learned behaviors. You are actively learning permanently to sing something with half your voice. With instrumentalists, this sometimes means that they change the phrasing a little bit. And for wind players especially, if you neglect the phrasing and you're learning to do it shorter than you're supposed to, you're going to start learning in your mind and in your body. You are actively learning to breathe in the wrong spots. Don't do things half-heartedly. Don't sing with half your volume or with half your presence. Don't play with half of the gusto that you have. Don't practice in a way that you would be unhappy performing. We never practice wrong. The people who are practicing things half-heartedly, maybe they're not breathing correctly. Maybe they're not using their full volume. Maybe they're not attending to intonation like they should. They're going flat, they're going sharp. And it's silly things. It's all because they felt insecure about the notes and rhythms, and something else slipped. They're letting those little things slip, but it's teaching themselves to do it wrong, and we never want to do that. This is the 7th step, the second look. Okay, so you got all the way through the piece, and you focused on notes and rhythms, and you circled any trouble spots that came up along the way. Good for you! Now it's time to go back and do it again. We know, as musicians, that practicing doesn't stop with the first look. You've got to go back and try it again. Your goal here is going to be to improve one thing that you did wrong. Go ahead and isolate that spot before you go back and do the full thing. Take it out, slow it down, and make sure that you get the notes and the rhythms correct. Then you can add in things like stylistic characteristics, phrasing, things that will make it sound more like the performance. But focus again on notes and rhythms. When you're doing those trouble spots, you're going to want to go slower than you probably think you should. It's important. You can speed it up later, but if you can't do it slow, you can't do it fast. When you have consistent success doing it at a slower tempo, go ahead and speed it up a couple clicks, but slowly. And once you consistently do it at that tempo, try to speed it up a little bit more, and eventually you'll get it up to tempo. That's where you want to be. When you get it up to tempo, try practicing at least 5 times through perfectly without messing up. And at that point, you can be pretty confident that you won't mess it up again. That's my advice to you. When you're doing it those 5 times, you're going to want to make sure the notes, the rhythms, the dynamics, the text, the phrasing, the breathing, everything is right. After you've done all the trouble spots, run the piece through. This time, you'll be confident that you'll be able to tackle the hardest parts in the song with relative ease, and that's exactly where you want to be. All right, use these tips in your individual and group experiences next time you're looking at a piece of music for the first time. If you thought this was helpful, go ahead and consider subscribing to this channel And also, don't forget to hit the like button on this video. Happy sight reading, musicians, and we'll see you next time. Go in peace.